Where do we start? Where do we start with, parties at number 10, lying, cheating? Let's be honest, when you're actually announcing major restrictions on people's lives and people's businesses with a slippery slope that we've seen before, it's never gone in any other direction. Slippery slope starts, we keep on falling down it inevitably to lockdown. Being brought in without any scientific evidence, without any suggestion at all they'll work, without any proper even cabinet discussion before they're brought in. We know that we are heading in a very dangerous, scary direction. Those of us who've been fearful of vaccine passports, those of us who've said that we are never getting out of this until we say it is at an end, until the British people say enough is enough. We have done what we were told. We stayed at home. We protected the NHS. We wore our masks when you told us to. We did everything we were told to do. Well, we're still in it. We go in, we go out. It's the hokey cokey of pandemics. And this time, I think many more millions are waking up to the fact that these measures will do nothing to stem the flow of a virus that will do whatever viruses do, but it will have huge knock-on effects on our society, on business, on people's lives. I have no doubt at all that many of you listening right now felt exactly the same way as me last night. Just absolutely shell-shocked, angry, despairing, worried for our future, a country where a Prime Minister so casually, in response to a question from Dave from Chester, says that we should have a national conversation about forcing medical treatment onto people or them being punished if they do not comply. What happened to Britain? We've watched this happen around the world. We've watched this happen in New Zealand and in Australia, in Austria and in Germany and in Italy. But we all thought that our country was different, didn't we? We all thought that we were, let's face it, better than that. Well, I still think we are better than that. I don't think that we British people want to live in a society where people have to show proof of their medical records in order to go to a football match or to go to the cinema. I don't think we live in a country where people will just accept, just meekly, like sheep, stupid rules that are proven scientifically to make no difference to the spread of a virus, but do damage our ability to communicate, to enjoy life, and for people to make a living. I think that the British people are better than a conversation about mandatory vaccines. The slippery slope of saying, well, you're just selfish, you should get a vaccine because other people have got a vaccine, is a very, very dangerous road we do not want to go down. You think it doesn't affect you because you've been double jabbed? Well, you think a lot of those measures didn't affect you, like, masks in nightclubs didn't affect you. Well, pretty soon those measures will affect everybody again. I have no doubt at all that we are heading only in one direction this winter. And if you don't speak up now, when are you going to speak up? If you don't tell your MP now, if you don't write to the Prime Minister now, if you don't contact every media organisation you watch and you hear from now and tell them this is not acceptable to you, when do you plan to do it? We are once again at the start of the slippery slope that leads to lockdown. Please be under no illusion that that's the only direction that this goes in, because once again we're going to have measures now to save Christmas, and then in a couple of weeks' time we may have Christmas cancelled to save the new year. Or Christmas would be allowed, but as punishment for Christmas in January we'll go into more restrictions. Well, it's just a mask, you might say. But it isn't just a mask, is it? Because actually there's plenty of evidence now, very, very clear evidence, that the more mask mandates there are, the more people leave their homes, the more they refuse to go to venues. It's not hospitality, it's just on public transport and in cinemas and in shops. Well, when will it extend to hospitality? You can work from home. It's not a big deal, except we know massive hit to the economy from people working from home, quite apart from the total lack of work done by many millions pretending to be working from home. We know who you are in your pyjamas, the people who don't answer the phones at pretty much any business or any local council in the last 20 months. But also the knock-on effect on the takeaways, on the sandwich shops, on the cleaners, on the taxi drivers, on everybody else who works around those working in their offices and their workplaces. And even more terrifyingly, more scarily than ever, The requirement to show proof of your medical treatment in order to get into certain venues. Nightclubs, indoor, unseated venues, more than 500 people. Outside, unseated, 4,000 people. And any venue over 10,000, you'll have to show proof that you've had your COVID jabs, both of them, or at least there was this one sop to the backbenches and to Labour, proof of a lateral flow test. But it's a slippery slope, as I keep telling you. How long will the lateral flow test option be allowed? Especially when the Prime Minister, oh so casually yesterday at his press conference, in response to a question from Dave in Chester, asking about when we would have mandatory vaccines, that he said, well, he didn't want a society that was forced to have vaccines, but we need to have a national conversation about ways to deal with this pandemic. We don't need a national conversation about changing every single thing about our society, allowing the government to have the final say over what medical treatment we have, punishing us if we don't get the right medical treatment. Yes, the vaccines work. I implore anybody at any reasonable risk from COVID to get the vaccines and get your boosters. But it's entirely up to you whether you do. We were not put on this planet to protect the NHS. That is not our sole purpose in life. We have a right to live, to love, to walk freely, to earn living, to live our lives and see who we want to see. It's about time that everyone else realised that as well. These COVID measures brought in will not do a single thing to tackle COVID, to tackle Omicron, to save lives, to prevent hospitalisations or save the NHS. The government knows that, but they did it anyway. It's time for everyone to start asking questions. Why? Is this still about a virus?